Now for global business updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Vimbai. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, all our viewers. Welcome to Money Monday. There's a whole lot to look forward to this week. Let's put up the chart. As you know, of course, there's the reactions to the French votes. The European markets literally just opened up about 20 minutes ago. We've got Modi meeting up with Putin. That's Prime Minister Modi meeting up with Putin. We understand there's been some oil and weapons trading going on between them. Tuesday, Joe Biden, who is facing some bedwetting Democrats that want him to step aside for some odd reasons. He's going to be hosting the NATO alliance, meeting in Washington, D.C. Keir Starmer is going to be heading over there. Of course, speaking of Starmer, there's going to be MPs, the new Parliament meeting tomorrow. Wednesday, we've got testimony in Congress from Jerome Powell, U.S. Federal Reserve. That's the chair of the Federal Reserve. Then, of course, OPEC with their monthly oil reports in terms of oil prices. It's summer season, demand for travel, flights, and so on and so forth. Plus, there are cuts to maintain a price floor for oil. Thursday, you've got the important CPI numbers coming out of the United States. See how that affects monetary policy path. The DNC will also be meeting Democratic National Committee, again, regarding what's been going on in the U.S. And then Friday, we've got earnings from Wall Street banks, JP Morgan, Citi, Wells Fargo, and BNY. Of course, the European markets, we jump to that, just opening up, pointing downwards. It looks like the markets are still trying to digest what's been going on over in France, where we got that big result that the far right didn't get the victory that they got. In fact, they came in third. So the euro pointing down. I think it's still early trading. We'll have to see what happens later on today. The euro pointing downwards, in particular the CAC 40, the CAC 40, that's it, the market over in France down as well. The DAX in Germany a bit flat. FTSE 100 a little bit flat, bearish as well. And the pan-European Euro Stock 600 also pointing downwards as well. So it looks like they're a little worried because if we take a look at the table, the parliamentary results, so the left-wing alliance pretty much was what came out ahead with, what's his name, Jean-Luc Jean or whatever, coming out with the new popular front. That Luchon, thank you. George, thank you so much. So yeah, him coming out ahead. Remember, he wants to raise the retirement age. Remember, Macron, controversially reduced that. He wants to increase the minimum wage in France. All these, think of all these far left policies that he supports. Second place, they came in first 178. Macron and his allies in second place 158, and then Le Pen, the National Rally and allies, coming in third place. But there's no outright majority at this time. Let's quickly go to the UK. A story of youth. This young man, Sam Caring, he's been elected as the youngest MP in the UK. He's the Labour MP representing the Northwest Cambridgeshire. He's called the baby of the house, only 22 years old. The prior record was held by another Labour Party member, Keir Mather, I think in Shelby constituency. But this remarkable exchange here was on BBC over the weekend.
I grew up in quite a deprived rural area in the northeast of England, and kind of over those years saw quite a lot of things declining around me. So high streets in particular, and schools, sixth forms of local schools closing and leaving lots of people having to travel a really long distance to get to schools in the morning. And I never really made the connection to politics for a couple of years after that, when I was in the cohort of students, the first one whose A-level results were cancelled during the pandemic. And as a result of that, I became a lot more interested in sort of what's going on politically, and I kind of then got involved myself, ran to be a councillor, did that for a couple of years, and have just been elected as a Member of Parliament.
You graduated from Cambridge University. You're clearly a bright guy. A slightly trickier question then. One of the criticisms of MPs is that they are, many of them don't have real-world experience. You've touched on some of it there, but at 22, can you really offer real-world experience and to bring that to the House of Commons?
Well, I have a lot of experience that older members of Parliament won't. I've been renting insecure housing in the private sector for quite a while now, and that's an issue facing not just young people, but people all across the age spectrum. And it's something that I intend to do a lot of work on now that I'm in Parliament. So I always get a little bit frustrated when people mention life experience, because no one has yet been able to explain to me why being older makes you better at the job.
Well, you've got more experience, I think that's why.
But what kind of experience?
Well, by definition, over the years, you gain more experiences, don't you?
But what kind of experience, right?
What life experience?
No one's been able to. Well, we're going around in a circle there, aren't we?
Oh, no, good for you, Steve. No, good for you batting back. But, you know, you can talk about all the things you just mentioned of renting, jobs, children's services, looking after old people, elderly relatives, healthcare issues, all the sorts of things that you get over a lifetime. That's the point.
Yeah, I mean, look, as I said before, I've had a lot of experiences that lots of older MPs won't have had. And I've done quite a lot for my age as well. I mean, I've been a councillor for a couple of years and a cabinet member responsible for about £17 million of public money over the last year. I've been a trustee of a university, and I've done a lot of other things that perhaps wouldn't necessarily be typical for someone of my age.
22. I graduated from university at 22. I mean, it's incredible stuff. Let's go to Boeing. Boeing this morning has now agreed to plead guilty to fraud charges. Remember, we talked about this where the U.S. Department of Justice brought this forward. They're going to pay a fine, as we talked about, $250 million, but they'll get a credit for money they paid back in 2021. Also, a special monitor is going to be appointed for the next 3 years to go over Boeing's operations. Whether or not they will continue to get contracts from the U.S. is up in the air, but when you think about it, it's a duopoly. It's Boeing and it's Airbus, and that's really much it. You can count to Brazil's own company over there, but really it's between the two of them. So it's highly doubtful that Boeing contracts will be cancelled. This, I think, and I remember Sam Calhoun, who you saw get shredded in Congress in his testimony, he will be stepping down at the end of the year. Finally, to round off, I mean, you've already touched on the ECOWAS matter. Look, the fact that Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger now are still remaining defiant. The sanctions haven't worked. These are really small countries. Their combined GDP is like $51 billion. That they are holding up ECOWAS to this point is pretty sad. There was no mention of the ECO currency to try to boost regional trade, although we know we have PAPs coming up from the Afro-Exim Bank. That's the Pan-African Payment Settlement System to make trade easier. President Tinubu was talking about the need for quote-unquote innovation in order to boost the economies of ECOWAS. I mean, think about what's coming out from Silicon Valley. There's not been no innovation coming out from ECOWAS. I don't know. I wish him luck this next year, but yikes. That's all we have for this morning.
Rotus, don't be like that. So you want to kill the joy of them, Niger, and you're saying that ECOWAS is just 51 billion? You're a bad man.
ECOWAS is weak, Rufai. They are a weak body.
No, I know now. I knew, but don't make it obvious, Rotus. That's what we are saying. Don't be a bad person here. Real quickly, couple of things. Number one will be a very great point you raised about the ECO. But you see, Rotus, that currency will not work. Because a couple of years ago, Macron went to Abidjan, and what they were trying to do was to use French might to cannibalize the ECO currency as against Nigeria. And it's even worse off at a point where we are at a weaker point in terms of our naira and at a currency standpoint. So I smell a lot of colonialism politics to be played with that ECO. And that's how we should open our eyes. As I say, I'm sorry, it's not really going to work because we have that wahala. Rotus, the second problem I want to talk about on the foreign scene is about Boeing. The main problem with Boeing used to be one of the most safety-conscious airline makers in the world. The main problem with Boeing, and that's why let's be careful of mergers, was when they decided in 1996 to merge with McDonnell Douglas. Those that are known for very terrible aviation safety records. You know the DC-10 now. We all remember Nigerian Airways and DC-10 crashes. That was when they brought in the culture of lack of transparency and accountability and profit over safety. It was the MC Douglas merger that ruined Boeing. So I'm happy they've accepted for fraud now, pled guilty to fraud in their system. I just hope they were able to boot out components of MC Douglas that puts profit and share buyback over the safety of their passengers. I mean, how can you be making some plane parts on fuselage with plywood at a time like this? So let's be careful about corporate culture. As I always say, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. Be careful.
Right. I would hate to be in the room right now with Emmanuel Macron's team of advisors because the snap election was one of the most poorly advised moves that one could have ever made. I don't know what they expected to happen, but the backlash, the backfire is absolutely just, it's embarrassing for him, because we know that the French Parliament needs 200 seats minimum, but 240 to 250 seats to comfortably be able to conduct business in Parliament. So now what all the headlines say is chaos. It would be interesting to see what this does for the euro in the coming days, because everybody is expecting, there are no coalition talks at the moment, because Le Pen is enjoying her moment, Mélenchon is enjoying his moment. Nobody wants to come in and form a government with Emmanuel Macron. Of course, his prime minister as well, I mean, he's just fresh in office recently, is looking set to also resign by all indication, according to his speech yesterday. So, I know we're going to delve into that further, but I'm quite curious to see how this will impact the Eurozone. Now, very quickly to the young politician in the UK. I think it's so funny that this is where age politics has gotten, because when you look at Africa, I always bring the conversation back to Africa. You look at Samora Machel, Kenneth Kaunda, Thomas Sankara, Robert Mugabe during his time as a liberation fighter. When you look at the people who led Africa to independence, they were all in their 20s, 30s at the time. I know my father was in the trenches, and he left home when he was 16 years old to join the liberation struggle for Zimbabwe, what was then Rhodesia, for it to become Zimbabwe. So it's interesting to see that we now grill young people and try to make it seem as though they're ill-experienced and unqualified. Meanwhile, it was young people in their youth at the time, who actually were able to do a lot, get us a lot of the gains that we got as Africans.
Well, France, you need an outright majority of 289 seats, to be able to have an absolute majority. But none of the parties, has that absolute majority. So what we have in France, after this election, is a hung parliament. Now that hung parliament, how will it be able to function? What are the implications from the market? Would President Macron be able to forge an alliance with the left wing? With Mélenchon saying the president should bow and just allow the left to, to form the government. Well, the Mélenchon leads, one of the parties to the leftist alliance, and he calls himself France Unbowed. But he's saying that Macron should bow and accept defeat. But the thing speaks to itself. Gabriel Attal, the prime minister, will have to step down. But let me go back to the point about, the uncertainty that France faces. Now, there will be a lot of volatility with the stocks. We have seen the indication. The bond yield has risen by about 0.36%. But analysts are saying, it's not going to be sustainable. 3, France is positioned now for clash with the European Union. Now, the European Union was planning to classify France as an excessive deficit, to place France under excessive deficit procedure. Now, with a fractious parliament, France may not be able to meet, the budget rules that, the European Union will present before it. So there's a lot of uncertainty ahead, but we'll see how it works out, both locally and in terms of policy. Now the leftists, they have no policy agenda. Macron is pro-growth. They are not even sure. It's a coalition of communists, socialists, leftists, even ecologists. What is their policy agenda? That remains to be seen. As for Sam Carling, the first MP in the UK Parliament to be born in the 21st century. Well, the young man says people should not make his age the issue. The person that he defeated had been in Parliament for 20 years, but he won with 39 votes, which shows confidence in the power of the youth. And he says that his example will encourage younger people, young people, to show more interest in their politics. And I think that's the symbolism of it. And he's saying, look, let's get to work. I have things to pursue about health, about NHS, and I just like the confidence that he brings to the table. As for Boeing is going to pay, as part of the plea deal, $246.3 million. which is the same penalty that they were given, in 2021. But, well, that makes the company a felon in the eyes of the law. But they will plead guilty. Justice Department put out a statement yesterday. But the thrust of it is that they will have to pay a fine, almost equal to what they were asked to pay the other time. Well, thank you very much, Rotus. I think that's about it. It's time now to go to another subject. Thank you.